Hi everyone. What we are looking at right here is NCODE, a new feature in Opusmodus. And I guess the N in NCODE stands for no, because what this allows us to do is work with Opusmodus functions, with musical functions, in a graphical kind of way. So we don't have to write any code. What we can do is simply insert a function name, and we see the parameters, we enter those parameters, and we are good to go. And the great thing is that, especially if you're new to Lisp, now you don't have to pay too much attention to how many parentheses you have and those back quotes and those finicky kind of Lisp things that can trick you up sometimes. So what we are looking at right now is a score I made, which is basically a drum beat, which is different every time I evaluate it. And it has a fill always in the fourth bar, so 4, 8, 12, etc. So what we see on the left here. We'll take a look at that in a second, but let's first start with a new NCODE session. So if we go to File and we go to New, we have the option here to create an NCODE session, which is basically this window that we see. I will call it Tutorial 2 because I had another one already. And this is what you see if you open a new session. So what we can do here is we can insert a function. You can start typing. Let's say I type poly, and you can see all the functions that match that. And I can hit return to select the one that I want. Now, if I do that, I see the parameters that this function likes to see. So I see the required ones and the other ones here, which are optional. So before we start working with this, let's first give it a name. I'll give it a poly name. In this case, I will say how many points I want, how many points in total, and where it's going to start. Now, if I want to see the output of this, I can click Evaluate, which would be like Command E in the regular editor. And then you can see what this evaluates to. If I'm sure I want to use this and I want to add it to my main sort of score or history window, this is called, I can hit Apply, and it will show up right here. So now if I want to have a new function after that, I can say new, and I can do, for example, assemble seq. I can select that, and in my sequence here, I can give it the name of that variable there. So poly, and I can give this a new variable seq and apply again. Right, so now we have two things right here, and what I can do is I can right click on any of these variables here, the items here, and I get a couple more options. So one is I can show this in notation, so there we see the rhythm in notation. I can see this in the MIDI player as well. I could also say I want to see this as a graph, so let's say lengths, for example, and then we can see a beautiful graph of specifically this line. So it allows you to really sort of see what's going on there. I could also here export to editor. This is interesting, and I want to make a separate video on this. This allows you to export this to whichever other editor you're using to work with XML or to work with scores. In my case, I've set up a Muse score, which you do with a def parameter. Click here on notation. It should then simply open your editor, and it shows the rhythm in there. So this is very nice if you want to go back and forth between, like, for example, Dorico, Sibelius, or what have you. So we have that, and then at the top here we have some filters. So right now I have two functions with the type length. Let's do, let's see if we can do an integer invert here. We do 3, evaluate will be -3. Let's do apply. You can see now that the type here is numbers, where the other type is lengths. That's what these filters are for. So if I only want to see my numbers, I can click on this filter right here. If I only want to see my lengths, I can click on the filter right here. And it works the same for pitch, velocity, articulations, OMN, and edited. And edited is everything that you edited like without saving it. So let's go back to all, which gives us the full list. Let's right click here once more, go to edit, and then cut this function. All right, so that's about the top part right here. Then we have refresh all, and this is a very important one. This is basically like command option 1 in the regular editor, and this refreshes all your variables in order. And if you want to use a def score, which we'll take a look at later, then you definitely want to do this so that you know that you're in the correct state, that all the variables have been evaluated in the correct order, etc. So refresh all is always a good button to smash. Then next to that we have variables, which basically is an overview of the same list again, but it allows us to order them. So I can put this up or down, I can remove it. So this is for reordering your variables. I can clear all, which does exactly what it says. I can go define score, which will take us to the def score panel. And that looks like this. And here we can choose or lay out items and then our instruments and build our whole def score. I'm going to take a look at that in a second. And we also have save to file. Save to file again prompts you for a path. I will call this test 3 for no good reason. And you could see that it puts this in the media NCODE folder. So we have test 3 here. And this is what we just did in code. Right, so this for these middle buttons right here. Now, if we are working in this bottom panel, when we have for example, an input field here where it says poly, I can right click on this and I can insert any variables that I already have. So that way you don't have to type. I can also, let's remove this here and then click on edit. And that way you can simply work in more of a code kind of window. And then apply that and it will put it in there, so it gives you more room to work with. So this edit is not the same as code here. When the code here will just show you what this function looks like if you were to write it in code. So let's clear all of that. Now for this, let's go back to the polygon rhythm. You might not remember what these values are. To see those, we can always click doc here. It immediately takes you to the right page and it says, hey, an n-gon is a number of sides and points is a number of points, etc. So you can get an explanation there. Actually, while we're at it, a very good one here to check out is probably in the documents folder under manuals NCODE. And basically everything I'm saying right there, you could simply read as well, because it's all in there, everything is explained, all the little details, etc. So a good resource there. And then if we focus a little bit more on these things at the bottom, I think we went over everything. One that was missing still is this one here. This allows you to repeat a certain thing. So let's say I want the function, let's do make OMN. OMN, we'll say length 8 note, pitch is a C. I can click 4 here and then apply, and now it creates 4 variables. And if you leave this name of the variable empty, it will name it automatically, which is actually also a pretty neat function. It's usually a pretty straightforward name and it's program created. So that's a nice thing. Now, let's take a look at this define score, the def score. So let's go back to the session I created, which was called my drum machine. And we load that up. And what I'm doing here is I'm assigning various things. So I'm starting with a seed just so that there's a lot of functions in here that have random values. And the seed I explained before, this allows us to fix it to a certain value. So if I evaluate all of this, I get the seed number, and that is for that specific version. So if I set that again, it will sound the same as my last evaluation. Then here I set some global parameters because I have some things that I wanted to change the beat. So for example, the BPM we can change, the size in bars, the beat division, and the notes for the fill. If you're using a different like drum library, you might want to change those notes, right? So after that, it goes into creating a kick, which just a quick length, a gen loop, and then into time signature. Then we have a snare drum. Then we have a hi-hat for which we use a Euclidean rhythm. You can see that this beat division variable is passed there. I have a bunch of sort of hi-hat things here until it eventually ends up at hi-hat here. Let's first do a refresh all here so that we're sure that everything is evaluated. And then I could do a snippet here of notation and look just at my hi-hats, for example. Or I can go to this Euclidean rhythm here. I can do a graph of lengths. and I get the length there of my Euclidean rhythm. So if we go all the way down, we get a fill here. We get some gen pauses, the sections that I don't want the fill to play, which is everything except like 3, 7, 11, etc., which would be bars 4, 8, 12, etc. So probably the most interesting thing in this score, and I will attach it to the video, is the polyphony. So what we're doing right here, my kicks and my snares are both randomly generated. And this makes it so that sometimes there's a kick right on top of a snare drum, which is not what I wanted. I always wanted the kick and the snare to avoid each other. So for this, I'm using the polyphony function. And what you can see is that if we go back to the kick notes here, we have the length, and then we have the make OMN, and or the make OMN here. And we can see here that the pitch of the kick drum is C1. And then if we go to the snare drum, which should be here, we actually have two different pitches. We have the D1 and the D2. So what I'm doing with the polyphony function is I'm checking whether the interval is a second or a 14th. Like an interval of 14, no, 14th doesn't exist. Like 2 semitones or 14 semitones apart. So this would be a D an octave higher than the original C kick. And what it will do in that case is it will pause the kick drum if there is a snare drum in this position. This is what the P here stands for. So just a neat trick to sort of, this is called usually choke in a drum machine, where you can set up these choke groups. Battery has this, for example, where if a certain hi-hat plays, never another hi-hat can play at the same time. Anyway, maybe a little bit too much in depth for the scope of this video. But yeah, just something to look at. So let's take a look at that defined score here. And this is where we set up our, first our layout. So if you want to add a new staff to your score, you just choose a staff here. So actually we'll click on add here. This will give us a, this one I think it was. And then let's choose, for example, oboe layout. And then we give it the name of the instrument. That's the instrument you want to use later on in the instrument names. So I can call this test, and then the name that you want to see in the score itself. So test, clef, whatever. And then I can click add here, and this will add it to my layout items. Now if I want to add this to my score itself, I can choose a variable here. Let's say kick. I give the instrument the same name, so test, and then let's add this here, and then it shows up there. And with this, if you do a notation, you can see that I have my test clef showing up right there, which was not in the original one, but we just added it. Now, I don't want that in this case, so I'm going to delete it from my instrument items, and I will also delete it from my layout items, like this. All right, now in my case, all of these nodes are going to, they're going to logic right now. So you can see I've set up this Opusmodus 1, this is my port. Usually you want to choose like port 1 or port 2. These are the ports on your IAC driver. I chose channel 10 here, and the sound and the program are ignored because I'm using a straight MIDI out. And then to quickly show you the instrument itself. So like I said, this happens in Logic. So it comes in here, and then we have a battery here, which I'll put here right now. And then let's see if we can listen to a bit of the score. Right, so that's the basic score, and then with the variables here we can change some stuff. So for example, the beat division is now set to 116. I can set this to 112. I then need to hit apply to apply this in place, And then generally I want to hit refresh all, so that it's going to refresh all the variables again and make sure that this is properly applied in the right order as well. Then we can go to define score again, and we can again do notation or MIDI player. Let's do MIDI player this time. Right, so now you can hear that it has a triplet kind of feel. If we want to see that in notations, maybe a little bit clearer. Now, and of course, I can also, if I close this, I could change this back to 16, apply. Then I could go to the BPM. I change this to, let's say, 90 and apply that as well. So this is how we can change our drum beats a little bit. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So one more thing I want to show you is that if we now hit save to file again, and we do drum machine tutorial, it will place us in our Opusmodus main folder, which we can then find here. This one. So this is the whole score. Now you can see it clearly laid out, every function line by line, and you could continue working on it from here, or you could use it in a different editor, or simply keep working within your NCODE. Now also with this project, because it's a little bit bigger, you can see that these filters, they work a lot better and they allow you to zoom in on specific functions. Right, so that's all I wanted to show for today. I think you'll have a lot of fun with this. As always, start small, experiment with just a couple of functions and see where it gets you. And also don't forget to check the manual. It's a very useful resource for this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in another video.